people with a defense mechanism, they're not listening to understand. They're constantly scanning the words being spoken to them. What do I need to defend? What do I need to defend? It's like dribbling that ball in place, but they're never taking the shot. Running in place, but they're not getting anywhere. That's a defense mechanism, okay? A defense mechanism, and also another way to spot it, is when you say something to them or someone else does that is not remotely offensive in any capacity whatsoever, and they find great offense in it, and they run with it, and they just kind of close off, and they get pouty, and they're very emotionally immature when that happens. And you're like, hey, what happened? They tell you, they're like, well, so-and-so did this and they meant that, and you're like, whoa, hey, I was there. That actually wasn't said, nor is that what took place. They literally have a completely different recollection of the event that took place that triggered them, because they're so triggered all the time. They constantly are defending themselves. Hello, everyone. How are you today? I hope that you're all doing good. Thank you all for tuning in. If you're watching on YouTube, you see this little flag on my microphone. It's called a flag, and it's so cool. It's so cool to have that in the video. So anyways, I'm super happy to be recording with that on my microphone. So today I want to talk about the plunger effect. And yes, I said plunger, just like for your toilet. So this is something the other day when I was writing, and I was in a super creative mode, and I was writing about relationships. And sometimes I try to think about what's the best way for me to give a description so that everyone understands it, because we all hear things differently. We all understand things differently. And I love analogies, right? So I came up with something as I was writing, and I was like, holy shit, that's good. I got to share that. So if you follow me on Instagram, thank you. I've created a reel on it, but I'm going to share that here today. All right. So this episode is really about the difference between arguing versus talking in your relationships. So it seems like when you're talking with your significant other, it's really easy to get derailed, and it ends up in an argument, right? And it shouldn't be that way. And if you're in a relationship where you are actually able to talk to one another, then you have done the work, and or you're just very emotionally mature people. And kudos to you for that. And that's the goal, I think, of every relationship, right? To be able to talk to one another. But you also don't want to talk to someone and them just agree with everything, or just, yeah, okay, yep, sounds good. Whatever you like, whatever you want. That's not what anyone wants, because in the end, that just means you're holding things in, and it's going to come out. It's going to come out all at once, and it's not going to be good. And honestly, it's a form of lying, because you're leading someone on to believe that you agree with what they are saying or what it is they want to do, or you know what I mean? So if you're watching on the video and I'm looking down, yeah, I wrote, this is what I was writing the other day. And so I'm reading what I wrote. So why is it happening? Why is this happening that when you're talking to your spouse, your partner, you end up arguing? And, for someone who's been through very abusive relationships, every relationship I've had in my life, besides the one I have with my current husband, every relationship before him was abusive. And I don't mean just a little, I mean a lot abusive, right? And so I never knew what it was like to have a healthy relationship, especially one with a man. And so I have found that as I've gone through this, and we have grown in our relationship, I have found, what that's like to go from a super abusive relationship, narcissistic abusive relationship, to a healthy one. And it's really not easy. It's not easy because you have you have been manipulated and brainwashed in more ways than you can comprehend if you've been in that kind of relationship. So, why is this happening, right? I believe it's because triggers get provoked, right? That's the main culprit. That leads to unnecessary defending instead of listening. So, if you listen to the last episode, about the defense mechanisms, a defense mechanism is when someone is constantly being triggered. So we all have triggers, right? As I say, triggers never go away, but how you react to them do. Once you've done the healing, once you've done the inner work, your triggers are just simply reminders, right? It's like that trigger gets triggered and you're just like, hey, that used to really bother me, or it used to make me do this, and now it's just a reminder of how much I've grown, what I've been through, how far I've come. Or if when you're triggered, it's an instigator, it creates a negative response in you, and a negative emotional response, then that needs to be healed, right? But a person with a defense mechanism, they are they are in a state of constant triggering. In other words, when you get triggered, that's like the light switch goes on, but then it goes back off, right? It doesn't stay on all the time. When you have a defense mechanism, it does. It's like someone flipped the switch, and it can't be flipped off. The only thing that can flip that switch off is to do the inner work. And I've been learning a lot lately about the defense mechanism, and I do believe that, the relationships that are in your life that you're being put in, hey, it's for a reason. Especially the ones where it's just like, holy shit, are you serious? I have to deal with this shit again? Why didn't I see this before? Right? And instead of being just irritated about it and it making it like a wedge in that friendship, a relationship, stop and ask what I always tell you to do. Stop and ask, hey, universe, what is it that I need to do here? What is it I need to learn? What are you trying to show me? And so that happened to me, right? And I realized I thought I had coined defense mechanism. I hadn't, but I've coined plunger effect. But in order to tell you the plunger effect, I got to go through this scenario first, right? So, how do you know if your partner has a defense mechanism? It is because they are in a constant state of being triggered. When you talk to them and you tell them something, um, they don't really hear what you say. In fact, it might seem like they do, but then when that time comes for whatever it is you talked about, that, day later, week later, month later, they're like, you never told me that. You didn't say that at all. And you're like, I did. It's because people with a defense mechanism, they're not listening to understand. They're constantly scanning the words being spoken to them. Like, what do I need to defend? What do I need to defend? It's like dribbling that ball in place, but they're never taking the shot. Running in place, but they're not getting anywhere. That's a defense mechanism. Okay. A defense mechanism, and also another way to spot it is when you say something to them or someone else does that is not remotely offensive in any capacity whatsoever, and they find great offense in it and they run with it, and they just kind of close off, and they get pouty, and they're very emotionally immature when that happens. And you're like, hey, what happened? They tell you, they're like, well, so and so did this and they meant that, and da da da. And you're like, whoa, hey, I was there. That actually wasn't said, nor is that what took place. They literally have a completely different recollection of the event that took place that triggered them, because they're so triggered all the time. They constantly are defending themselves, right? So when you are trying to talk to someone with a defense mechanism, right? You're in a relationship with them, you're talking to them, and you're trying to have a heart to heart. It's honestly almost impossible, because when it seems like they're listening, no, they're not. You feel like sometimes you get through to them, you don't, because when it comes time to make a change or to do something different, like from what you asked for, that's very hard for them, because they feel like they're letting themselves down in the promise they made themselves a long time ago when they decided no one will ever hurt me again. I'm always going to defend myself, right? But the thing is that trigger right there, when you're trying to talk to them, it gets provoked and it leads to the argument. And then as the person that's trying to talk to them and convey a message that is respectful and, not said in an ugly manner or loud, they don't hear what you're trying to say. They think that you are complaining about them, making them feel like they don't do enough, they're not good enough, that you're perfect. And that's really, really hard. So when you are listening to defend instead of listening to understand, it's impossible to have a successful relationship. The matter at hand ends up being saturated with what I call the plunger effect. That's when unnecessary shit keeps getting brought up, brought into the conversation, and then that talk turns into an argument. And, you know, it's really, really hard to get past that. Now, just because someone maybe brings up old shit constantly in a relationship when you're trying to talk doesn't mean they have a defense mechanism. But if the person you're in the relationship with does, uh, what's hard about it is that you, with all your good intentions, end up just having to just be like, all right, I'm not going to be able to get through to them right now. Um, I mean, they can full on not talk to you for a week or 2 weeks, and they will feel like you owe them an apology simply because you were trying to talk to them because they heard you say something bad about them or complain when you didn't even remotely do that. Now, then there's people that when you're talking to them, um, they're just emotionally immature and they want to bring up old stuff. A lot of people do that tit for tat thing in the relationships. It's like, oh, okay, well, if they're going to talk about this, I'm going to bring up that. And then before you know it, you got a big pile of shit in front of you and you were just trying to talk about one particular thing. So the plunger effect will absolutely destroy relationships because you are pulling up old shit and you are saturating something good with it. Just stop doing it. Listen to your partner. Listen to understand and not listen to defend. There's a reason that God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth, right? And I know it's hard. I really, really do. Sometimes it's hard to hear things about ourselves. Um, but honestly, if you love that person and you respect them, which I would imagine you do, right? If you're in a relationship, maybe you should listen to what they have to say. Maybe they see something you don't see, right? Most importantly, if you are in a relationship with someone, I'm assuming that you deeply care for them and love them and respect them. So don't you want that relationship to work? Don't you want to do everything you can to make that relationship absolutely amazing? I would think so, because if your answer is no, then what are you doing? You were wasting their time and you're wasting your time. Get out of that relationship if you just want to argue with them. Get out of that relationship if they don't want to listen to you ever. Get out of that relationship if you're constantly just going to defend and not listen. Just fucking get out. Stop wasting each other's time. But if you love them and you respect them, you don't want to lose them, start listening. It is so amazing how listening, that's a woman's best friend, guys. When you listen to a woman and you really listen, first of all, she can tell when you're just agreeing and when you're actually listening. But when you listen to her, wow, that's a game changer in the relationship. Most women are, it has to be an emotional attachment in order to have a sexual attachment. And, we're not like men, right? There has to be for most women some sort of emotional connection. If I feel disconnected from my husband, I don't want to have sex, right? And that's just how I am. Thankfully, that doesn't happen much, but that's just how a lot of women are. So listen to them. It's going to make everything better. And honestly, sometimes that's really all that people want is just to be heard, right? To feel important, to feel like they matter to the person that matters a lot to them. So if you're doing the plunger effect in your relationship, please stop doing it. Just stop. Every time you find yourself wanting to just, you know what? If they're going to talk about this, I'm going to bring up this stuff. I never talked to them about that. And that's the thing. There is nothing more absolute fucking annoying and immature than when someone says, why can't you just be cool? Like, I don't bring up everything that you do that bothers me. And there is stuff, but I just don't talk about it. Like, why can't you do that? That's an excuse that also typically comes from someone with a defense mechanism. That's an excuse to say, I refuse to accept responsibility and or acknowledge what you just told me that you don't like. And so my way of not dealing with it and changing anything is by telling you, hey, I haven't pointed out everything to you I don't like. You know that thing you did months ago, years ago? Never told you about it. But since you're going to tell me something that I find critical, I'm going to get the old plunger out and I'm going to pull up some old shit. Don't fucking do that. Absolutely childish and immature. And let me tell you something. If whatever you're bringing up and plunging up from the past was so damn important, you should have brought it up then, right? But I don't believe anyone gave you a shovel and a plunger and told you to go dig up some old shit. So stop doing it. Just from now on in that relationship, respectfully talk about the things that, not nitpicking, but just things that like, hey man, this is how that made me feel. You don't need to pick each other apart. If you're picking each other apart, you're clearly with the wrong person. Get out. But sometimes people do something and they don't realize how it came across. And when someone tries to tell you that, just fucking listen, own it, and don't ever do it again. Right? All right. Thank you all for tuning in. Just to let you know, I'm still soaring on the charts in mental health, nutrition, and health and fitness in the United States. So keep on subscribing, downloading, sharing, liking, and thank you all.